In the last lesson, we saw what the basics of HTML. So opening and closing tags, we've got some self-closing tags, and these are just information. This is just information that gets presented to the browser and helps it render out the content as intended. So typically for a web page, you've got a whole bunch of information that you might want to present to the browser. And you might not even want to present it to the user, so this might be for the browser only. And this is where we add in meta information, and we typically, what we do is, so we'll have an opening HTML, we'll have an closing HTML tag, and also, by the way, it actually doesn't matter if you do uppercase and lowercase, so you can close those tags off as well, but typically we use lowercase within web development because the uppercase is just it's too large and too bolded out, so it stands out a little bit too much. So best practices usually try to keep it to lowercase, but however, if you wanted to, you can use both or either or. So we've got our opening HTML, closing HTML, and basically what this tag does is it tells the browser that you can be expecting HTML code between these two tags. So this is all it is, and it's the same idea as when we set up the paragraphs where we've got content between the tags and creating the whole entire HTML element. So when you're looking at a web page, you know there's a lot more information than that just gets displayed here. So we've got information up here that indicates to the website what's contained within the web page. So we've got these titles here, and when we look at the source code, we see we've got a whole bunch of information up here in them. We've got some meta information specifying the character type. We've also got some doc type specifying what type of document it is. So there are different types of HTML documents. So this is all guiding the browser to be able to better render out that content. So that's why we're including it, so the browser can better understand and render out that content. So let's take a look at typical structure for a web page, and we're going to have head tags, so opening and closing head, and then next we have body. So it's within this order. And this is really the bare bones of what an HTML web page is going to look like. So within the head section, this is where you could add in content that you would typically keep as information for the browser to render out. So you wouldn't have like something like a title here within the visible area, and this is why it sits within the head. So title is going to be opening and closing tags, and as you can see, the semantics of the wording here used really does make a lot of sense. So we've got a head and a body, so this provides our structure, and then within the head, if we wanted to add in a title, we can go ahead and add in that title. So I'm going to just call it HTML course basics of HTML. So we see that we've got our title in here, opening and closing, and now when I refresh this page, we can see that the title now appears up here in the tab here, and when we look at the source, we've got our title there. So this is how we can represent the title, but of course within a web page you've got a whole bunch more that you're going to be representing. So let's go ahead and add in some additional cues in order for the browser to better understand what type of content we want to render out. So now with HTML5, it's made it a lot simpler to specify the doc type, so we don't have to have all of this for the doc type. We can be really specific, and we can specify that the doc type, so we do a bracket here and we do doc type, and we specify that it's HTML. So this will help the browser understand that our document type that it should be expecting is going to be HTML. And as we can see, when we go to the web page, it's not actually going to see, nothing else really different is going to get rendered out. And this is just a guide for the browser in order to better understand what type of content it can be expecting. So this is, you can think of it as helping information to help the browser better understand. So let's specify a language as well. So another thing within the web, we know that it's international, a lot of different types of languages, and so this is why it's important to specify that the language is going to be English, so that just so that it knows what type of language that it can expect. And another thing that I'm just going to turn on this beautify on save. So another thing that we want to also include within our head section is some additional meta information. So this is where I'm going to place that up here, and so we've already specified that it should be expecting the English language content. So we've got these other tags that are called meta tags, and this is where you can add additional guiding information for your web browser. So another one that we typically set is a character set, and we see there's a lot of different types of characters for the web, and this is typically for different languages and so on. So if we're English, UTF-8 is the typical language set that we add in the meta information. So there are some other pieces of meta content that we typically add in. So one of them is going to be meta. So this is going to be typically done for your mobile. So every website these days should be mobile. So we're going to set a meta, another meta tag, and name. And this time the name is going to be a viewport. And what this is going to do is this is going to help scale the screen size depending on what type of device the user is coming in at, and depending on how much width the device is equal to. So basically it's setting the content to device width, and then here we set that initial scale, and we're going to equal it to 1. So basically this will help resize that content appropriately for the device that is viewing the content. And this is again all guiding information to help the browser render it out. So it really does help with mobile, because sometimes maybe if you've gone to a website you see really tiny little text, and that's because they haven't set the viewport. So another one that I usually like to set, and none of these are really mandatory, but it is a good idea depending on what you want to do. So I usually like to set an author. So the content for the author meta name is going to be, usually I like to author it by my company name. This is Discovery VIP, and then we can just save that. So this is going to give the browser, when it's rendering out the content, some more guidance, and as well as search engines will use this as well to take in some additional information about the website. So this is where you would typically find all of this meta information, and there is really a lot of meta information that you can add in, and then this is going to be your choice as well. So previously when we were designing websites, you might have heard that we use keywords, we use descriptions, and keywords really aren't used a lot, but meta description is. And the reason that we still use meta description is not that search engines apparently don't index that content anymore, but they do display it within the search results. So having a paragraph here, or a sentence I should say, describing what is contained within the page is going to be really good practice to get into, and this format is going to be the same. So name is the meta type, so we've got our meta name, so description, author, viewport, and then the content that's contained within that meta information. So this is where we add in content, and this is about 155 characters to essentially describe what is on the page. And also keep in mind that this is content that doesn't get displayed out to the user, so the user actually doesn't see this information, but really good practice, especially when it comes to SEO. And SEO, if you're not familiar with that, that's just optimizing your web content for better search results. The better you rank within search engines means the more traffic you're going to be getting from them. So it's really important to optimize the content here, especially focus on the title. Make sure that you have a really good, solid, different title for every page, and that it makes sense with the content that's being displayed out on the page. And also add in these descriptions, because they are going to help. If you have a really good, enticing description within your description field here, you might actually get a few more clicks. So even if you show up maybe lower in the results, than some of your competitors, if you have a really good enticing description, people might see that, read it, and they might be enticed to click over to visit your website. So it doesn't hurt, and it's always good practice to get into these SEO practices early when you're designing websites. So always think about those when you are creating your web content. So this is a basic template that you could use and repurpose, so placing the title, updating the description, and then the rest of it you can just repurpose and use. So essentially what happens here is that the content will go between here. So I'm just going to actually comment out some area here, so just say for content. And this is how you make comments within your HTML, and again you'll see that nothing gets displayed out to the user. So comments are intended for development purposes, so you can really specify what you can add in. So if you design a template, it's always a good idea to add in your commenting that to make sure that you know that you need to make some changes. So you could also do things like change title, change description. So we could do something over here as well. So that's just a reminder. And the purpose of this is when you open up your HTML page, you're designing a brand new page, so you're going to read through these reminders and you're going to say, okay, well, I got to change the title and description of this, and I've got to add in some content here.